Settle in, folks. Today, we're covering the important issues. Since its inception, the internet has been awash with arguments of who would win hypothetical battles. Goku versus Superman, which Superman would win. Terminator versus Robocop, which Robocop would win. 100 men versus a gorilla, which the 100 men would win. You get the idea. There are also a number of individuals, both real and fictional, that get placed into these hypothetical horn lockings very frequently. Goku, Batman, Homelander, Saitama, Gorillas, Eddie Hall, Mike Tyson, John Jones, you get the idea. One of the combatants that appears the most frequently in these matchups are chimps. Now, to chimps' credit, they do have a lot of things working in their favor. They're very aggressive, they're extremely intelligent compared to other animals, they have sharp teeth, great agility, a very impressive wingspan and reach relative to their height, and they are stronger pound for pound than humans are. However, the way that people talk about chimps would make you think that they're something straight out of a monster movie or a comic book, claiming that they are completely invulnerable demons that can literally rip a human limb from limb. The way people talk about chimps makes you wonder how humans ever became the dominant species if chimpanzees are really as fearsome as they claim. When it comes to who would win scenarios, there are matchups where people ask if a chimp could beat the world's strongest men. There are matchups where people ask if a chimp could beat Mike Tyson in a fight. There are matchups where people ask if a singular chimp could beat a team of multiple UFC fighters working together. There are matchups where people ask if a chimp could beat a human armed with a melee weapon in a fight. But if you take a realistic look at chimps' abilities, they don't really warrant being placed in these type of fights. The question isn't, could a chimp beat world-class fighters? The real question is, could a chimp even beat one average guy? Yes, chimps are, pound for pound, stronger than humans are. But let's look at the full context here. A lot of those that champion chimps will make the claim that chimps are many times stronger than humans. Not just pound for pound, but in regards to absolute strength. The source of this belief seems to be a study that was conducted in 1926, which concluded that chimpanzees possess 5 times the strength of the average man, which, given their size, would indicate pound for pound strength 7 to 8 times greater than that of the average man. However, this study has long since been debunked. In truth, chimps possess pound for pound strength just 1.35 times greater than our own. When you consider that male chimps typically top out around 130 pounds and weigh 110 on average, this means that the average specimen isn't even as strong as the average adult human male. A pretty far cry from the elite strength athlete level power that many purport these primates to possess. Even if you were to scale a chimp up to human size, being 1.35 times stronger pound for pound than the average human is a result that you can get by lifting weights for a year, if it even takes that long. These matchups where people pit chimps against men that are literally some of the strongest humans to ever walk the earth would by no means be a fight between two combatants of equal strength. Heck, a matchup between a chimp and a regular guy off the street isn't going to be a matchup between two combatants of equal strength. It's going to be a matchup between a chimp and a much bigger, stronger opponent. Now, for this video, I'm going to focus on the question of unarmed chimp versus unarmed human, because armed human versus unarmed chimp isn't even really a question. When humans first learned you could stick a rock and a stick together to make an axe, we became apex predators. When we learned how to sharpen long sticks to make spears, animals ceased to really even be competition for us. If you give a young adult to middle-aged, healthy, and able-bodied male human pretty much any melee weapon, knife, baseball bat, sword, etc., to fight the chimp with, we'll run that fight 100 times, and the number of times that the chimp wins isn't even going to break double digits, not by a long shot. Even though chimps are stronger than humans pound for pound, that strength comes with some trade-offs, namely lower intelligence, worse fine motor control, and worse endurance than we have. While chimps are some of the smartest animals out there, it's still a far cry from being as smart as a human being. A chimp obviously won't have the same fight IQ as a person. Chimps won't really be able to fight defensively against a human being. The chimp won't be able to think strategically in the same way that the human will be able to. Now, brains can beat brawn, and brawn can beat brains, but in the case of a human, we're talking about the chimp having to overcome significant deficits in terms of both brains and brawn compared to humans. In addition to lower intelligence than humans, chimps' superior pound-for-pound strength also comes at the cost of them having worse fine motor control than we do. For all that's made of chimpanzees' attack style of biting and ripping away at people, this method of offense is necessitated by their lack of fine motor control. Unlike humans, chimps aren't actually able to form a fist, so that means throwing a punch is out of the question. That leaves biting, scratching, slapping, grappling, dragging, and stomping. Are grappling, slapping, dragging, and stomping going to be effective against an opponent that's not only stronger, but also nearly twice the size of the chimp? While we're not the strongest, toughest, or fastest, when it comes to endurance, humans are actually some of the best in the world. There are a few reasons for this. The biggest reasons are our bipedal gait and our muscles being primarily comprised of slow twitch muscle fibers that are ideal for endurance, as opposed to the fast twitch muscle fibers ideal for quick, explosive movements that chimps' muscles are primarily comprised of. This endurance advantage means that if a human can remain evasive, something that is admittedly much easier said than done when dealing with an aggressive chimp, the chimp will tire out much more quickly than the human will. This means that the longer the fight goes on, the better the person's odds of winning become, as long as they can avoid getting seriously maimed by the chimp. Now, on the issue of the sharp teeth that chimps have, I won't try and argue against that point too much. Chimpanzees' fangs are very large relative to their overall size, and they definitely know how to use them in a scrap. With a bite force over 7 times stronger than our own, doing everything you can to avoid getting bitten by the chimp is pretty much priority number 1 in a human versus chimp fight. However, while many believe that teeth are merely a chimp's greatest weapon in a fight with a human, I would make the argument that they are the chimp's only weapon in that fight. Chimps' teeth are very sharp and can do a lot of damage, but you have to keep in mind how close to you the chimp has to get in order to actually use their teeth. If a human could keep the chimp at a distance, say by repeatedly kicking the chimp with our much longer legs, any advantage they get from their teeth is going to be severely mitigated. Another factor to consider here is just how small chimps are compared to humans. The average male chimp stands under 5 feet tall when on its hind legs and weighs about 110 pounds. 110 pounds is a little over half what the average American male weighs. Even if chimps are a little bit stronger pound for pound, their small size means that for a sufficiently strong person, the chimp can be thrown, flung around, or just generally ragdolled. This also makes it easier for the human to keep the chimp's teeth away from them. This is in addition to the fact that, like I said, as the fight goes on, the chimp will tire out much more quickly than the human will, making it even harder for the chimp to actually bite the person. While chimps completely outclass us when it comes to how dangerous their bites are, it isn't impossible to stop a chimp from actually being able to bite someone in a fight. Chimps are pretty famous for their brutality, and that reputation is without a doubt well deserved. 2 troops of chimps actually fought a 4-year war with each other back in the 1970s. During attacks, chimps will target hands, eyes, faces, and areas below the belt, so to speak. Not an experience that gets a lot of repeat customers. But what many fail to realize is that while being the victim of one of these attacks is obviously painful, it's actually not nearly as fatal as you might think. Chimpanzees are a lot better at mauling people than they are at actually finishing them off. Even in the most famous chimp attack stories that often get brought up by people trying to hype up how dangerous chimps are, the victims were disfigured, but still very much alive afterwards, although they did obviously require medical attention. While chimps have killed people before, people whose cause of death reads chimp attack aren't fully grown, able-bodied people in the prime of their lives. Most deaths are the very, very young, and even most maulings occur when the victims are north of 50. When chimps do attack people like that are young and healthy, there aren't any records of those attacks ending in the person being killed by the chimp. Unfortunately, there are innumerable recorded instances of human-on-human attacks ending in death, even when both people involved were unarmed. Needless to say, while chimps can seriously mess someone up, humans definitely hold the edge in terms of actually ending the fight. Another factor that gets too often ignored in these hypothetical chimp versus human fights is adrenaline. For all it's made of the intensity that chimpanzees attack with, it often isn't discussed how the surge of adrenaline that a human would get during a fight to the death with a chimp would result in a human fighting more intensely, being able to ignore a lot of the painful but not necessarily fatal attacks on the chimp, and also being able to use a lot more strength than they would be able to use in a non-life or death situation. Now, I can't guarantee that he'll have all of his fingers, a face that could be on the cover of GQ, or even the ability to still have kids afterwards, But if you took an average American male between the ages of 20 and 40 and made him fight a chimp, I truly think he takes it more often than the chimp does. If you took an American male that goes to the gym regularly, when I say goes to the gym regularly, I'm not talking professional athlete or even elite chemically enhanced gym rat. I just mean someone that does weights and cardio most days of the week, and put him in a fight with the chimp. The human takes it much more often than the chimp does. But really, there's only one way to find out who would win in a fight between a chimp and a human being. That's why you're the first to hear it. I'm officially announcing that I will be. Nah, I'm just kidding. Overrated or not, that is still not a risk I'm going to be taking. Good luck to anyone braver than me, though.